All right, welcome back to the Few Show, everybody. My name is Bud. I am an account executive here at xfusion.io and co-host of the Few Show. I am excited and a little bit intimidated to be joined by my guest today, Rebecca Krauthamer. Rebecca is the co-founder and CPO of QuSecure. She is passionate about artificial intelligence and ethics, connecting people who can make great things happen together, building cutting-edge technology that genuinely improves all people's lives and bringing out the best in people and teams. She is currently a Techstars Starburst 2021 Cohort member of QuSecure and named Top 12 Women in Quantum Computing. She's Stanford Symbolic Systems 2013, Forbes 30 Under 30, 2020 in Quantum Computing, Global Futures Council Quantum Computing for the World Economic Forum. Rebecca, thank you for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Bud. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So, like I said, I'm very excited for this show, but you are very, very, you are just robust, and there's many, many layers to you. And I'm going to start this out by kind of exploring that. Like, you weren't originally going into quantum computing, right? Like, you were originally going to be a doctor, like an MD doctor, correct?
Yes, sir. Yeah, no, frankly, there are far more qualified people to have gone into quantum computing than me. I just had kind of a lucky sequence of events where I ended up here. But yes, I wanted to be a doctor when I was growing up. First, it started out when I was, when you're really little and they make you do that project on what you want to be when you grow up. And I Googled, like, what's the closest school and what's the profession that makes the most money? And it was doctor at Stanford, and I got one of those things right. Later, when I got a little older, I kind of realized I wanted to help people. That was my motivation. So I kind of followed the doctor path for a little bit in school. But one, I really sucked at chemistry, and two, I shadowed in a medical clinic in Mexico for a summer, and turns out I was really bad with blood, and a little too, let's say, ADD to really kind of focus down one career path for the rest of my life. So much respect to doctors, but I think I kind of veered into entrepreneurship. Just for the ability to move fast and grow and do different things at different times. So ended up studying AI and got really passionate about technology and ethics and did a number of things. And, ultimately through twists and turns, ended up excited. My co-founders brought the idea of quantum computing to me, which was at the time about 3 years ago, sort of a new thing on my radar. And I just got really, really excited about the potential to be at the very forefront of this new wave of technology that's going to have such a huge impact on where and how technology develops, especially kind of coming from more the AI side of things. We have a lot of capability and a lot of things that we envision and theoretically can do when it comes to AI, but a lot the hardware as it is today sort of holds us back in some ways. And so quantum computing in my mind became this, this is the next frontier, especially in AI, especially in intelligent computing, et cetera. So being able to be at the very forefront of this coming revolution when it was so small and young. And also from the kind of ethics side, we have this opportunity to shape it into a field that is, we have the ability to get ahead of it, right? In a way that we haven't necessarily with other areas in technology.
Yeah. So that's quite a jump from medical doctor all the way to quantum computing, and super impressive to me. But I mean, what's even more impressive is, they came to you and they're like, "Hey, how about this quantum computing thing?" And you're like, "Hey, that sounds awesome. Let's just do that." Like, what goes on in your brain? Like, well, you're walking through the day and your brain just has to be like just going a million miles a minute. I mean, like you're just a different type of person to me that I can't believe I'm even talking to you right now. Like, this is crazy.
My brain has to be going enough to think like, oh yeah, I could. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. When I first saw your name and what you do, like, I don't know how old you are, but I'm like, okay, quantum computing. The first thing I thought of was Quantum Leap, Scott Bakula going through time. I don't know if you've ever even seen that show. So I'm like, oh boy, I'm so out of my. So I'm like, okay, I've got to do some research here. So I've learned a little bit about qubits. I've learned a little bit about all this kind of stuff. So I'm like, okay, here's a qubit, and I start looking into qubits, and I'm like, oh crap, okay, you're gonna have to explain qubits to me, because it says that a normal bit, operates in a 1 or a 0, right? But it says that qubits can operate in both simultaneously, and I'm like, all right,
I'll do
Rebecca, you're gonna have to help, yeah.
And again, because I am coming from sort of a different realm, everything had to be explained very simplistically to me, and then I had to kind of process it in my own simplistic way. So here's my qubit spiel. So imagine that you, as a human, are going through a maze, and you hit your first tee, and you can go right or left, right? So you're in this, whatever, corn maze or whatever. Mm-hmm. We have to choose, right? So you choose left, and then you hit another tee. You choose right, and then you iteratively find your way through, and hopefully someday you find your way out. And the way that classical computers work is similar, right? Your computer, you hit your first tee, you can go right or left. You can run these in parallel, but really it's still this iterative process and linear. But you're a quantum computer now, and you're trying to solve this maze. And you hit your first tee, and here it is. You can go right and left at the same time. And not just in parallel, but actually kind of as though both things were happening at once. And again, you hit the next tee right and left at the same time, et cetera, et cetera. So it's this cool kind of leveraging the weirdness of quantum physics. You can basically look at the whole maze simultaneously, all the paths, and then if you're clever about your quantum algorithms, you can cut off the ones that don't lead you to the out and instantaneously find the most optimal path. So it's kind of like if you could imagine going into all these different universes where each path exists, and you're kind of trying them out. And so intuitively, you can kind of feel how powerful that might be, right? In terms of computing. And there's several algorithms we have that can kind of exploit that and do cool things with it.
Yeah, and like you said, it happens instantaneously, like so much faster than any computer that we have going on right now. So
yeah, it's awesome. Like the way that it scales up. Yeah, so I'm on my MacBook, and in order to get double the processing power, I need to double the RAM, right? So I'd need 2 computers to go twice as fast. But if you want to scale up a quantum computer, you've got 50 qubits. To double it, you need 51 qubits. So every time you add a qubit, it doubles the processing power, which is pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was reading on you were doing some work with the World Economic Forum, like you said. So I was reading some of those articles, and it was the race for the world's first supercomputer, or for world's best quantum computer. Yeah, and it said with just 53 qubits, hold on, let me see if I can find this so I can get it right.
Yeah, it's these astronomical numbers that they're quoting, right?
Yeah. Yes, and it said that it did basically an algorithm in minutes what would take our biggest supercomputer 10,000 years to do with 53 qubits.
Totally.
And I'm like, good God, what are we in for? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's absolutely amazing to me. And then I'm like thinking, this is awesome. And I say this quite often on these shows, like people are cool. Like people are amazing. Right. And then I get on the road behind somebody and I'm like, and people are dumb. But people are amazing, right? Like we're just very, very cool. But then I got to thinking, what about the other side? Like we can do so much with this, but we can do such bad things with this. And that's where I kind of started looking into QuSecure, and that's kind of where QuSecure comes in, right?
Wow, yeah, great segue. Exactly. And so, yeah, and that's sort of the piece about we got to get ahead of this. Yeah, people are awesome. They're building these crazy machines. And also there's a lot of potential for harm. So one of the main, I referenced sort of when you're being clever about your quantum algorithm and finding the right path. So we have an handful of quantum algorithms. Probably the most famous one is this one that does some math that we can't do on regular computers. It uses the qubit logic versus the bit logic. And it does some fancy math that turns out breaks current cryptography, which protects basically all of our data. Everything when it's going from one point to another, when it's living on servers, wherever it is. Typically, it's encrypted with a really complex mathematical formula, and quantum computers come in. They, at a certain scale, are able to rip right through that. So that is this kind of coming. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, right? And there is this big international sort of competition happening too, where everyone's trying to build their quantum computer the fastest. So, what that translates into is sort of over the next decade, companies are going to be needing to make this upgrade so that all of our data is protected appropriately. So it's kind of this new set of algorithms and new stuff that we can do to protect our data from quantum computing attacks. So that's the solution, right? There's this risk, there's this threat that all of our data will get exposed, but we have a solution, and that's what we at QuSecure do. We have this sort of suite of software that lays over networks and data infrastructure and protects against those specifically quantum hacks, but also, all the existing. A lot of cybersecurity has been in the news a lot lately, right? Or at least maybe it has for me in my specific bubble. Mm-hmm. But so it protects against some of the existing stuff that we deal with day to day, and also the impending quantum hacks, which are not only bad because they're coming down the pipe, but they're also bad due to this idea of harvest now or store now, decrypt later. So there's some stats going around that other countries have harvested up to a quarter of all of our data, and while it's encrypted and they can't crack it right now, when they have a machine, a quantum computer that can do that, then all that data will be exposed. And so if it's data that has a shelf life, right, if it's bank account information, if it's anything that we don't really want to get out there over the next several years, then it needs to be protected now so that, if it is harvested, they just can't crack it, right?
Yeah. It's just crazy to me, getting into this, what all is entailed in it.
Right.
And kind of, it's a little bit worrisome to me, on the research that I've done, kind of how far behind the U.S. is compared to some of the people that we're kind of going against. Like, I had no idea. Ignorance is bliss, and I am no longer ignorant, and that kind of sucks.
Right?
So thanks for coming on the show, Rebecca.
No problem. Ruin your day.
But I am no longer ignorant to this. But at the same time, I'm looking at this and I'm going, this, what you're doing is awesome, and it's really not, your solution is not that hard of a solution for most everything that we need. Like the big government stuff may be more intense, maybe more in depth, right? But for us as companies and enterprises and individuals, like it's a fairly simple solution.
And that's the bright side, is that what we do, what QuSecure does, it's not quite rocket science. So we actually don't use quantum computers to protect against quantum computers. We use regular computers, math that's been around for a long time, and software that sort of easily overlays your system. So it's the goal has been to make it very accessible and easy to get ahead of this thing. So while the quantum computing development is a whole other story, we can protect against these kinds of hacks in a more simple way that doesn't take that kind of that advanced science. Well, let me be clear: the people coming up with the algorithms, very, very smart. But it's separate, and it's to market now, and it's ready to protect against these attacks.
Yeah, but let's I don't know, without scaring the crumb out of everybody, let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about why is the U.S. so far behind where like China and Russia are in the development? Was that an ego thing? Like, did we just decide that we didn't need it? Like, why are we so far behind?
That's a great question. And I think, so for example, China, they have stated that they've put in about $10 billion into quantum research, quantum computing, quantum technologies research. There's been a lot of press coming out that they have machines that can do a good amount of things. The U.S. has put in about $1 billion, and I think there's more coming down the pipe. And I think one advantage that we have, too, is that a lot of private industry has been working on quantum computing advancement as well. So I think back in 2019, Google came out with an announcement that they had reached quantum supremacy, which is this idea of using a quantum computer to do something that is exactly what you're talking about. It would be pretty impossible for even a supercomputer. So they used their quantum computer to solve this problem that would have taken 10,000 years. So there was some debate about this because they benchmarked it on IBM supercomputer, and then IBM came back and they were like, no, well, because IBM's also working on quantum computer. So, but we've had a lot of breakthroughs here. I think it's becoming more and more of a priority. I know that from the government side, there's mandates that have already been put in place that government agencies make these cybersecurity updates to protect early. My hope is that more and more goes into it research-wise, more and more goes into it from the private side too, or the commercial side. So, we do have Amazon, IBM, Microsoft, Google, etc., all of our giants pretty much working on, even Honeywell, working on quantum computers. And so, my hope is that we continue to grow and reach new milestones, and got a lot of really, really smart people working on it. So as far as, I think the next 10 years are going to be very, very interesting, but it should be a huge priority for us. That's what I think.
Yeah. I think it will be. It needs to be. But I just see how far, back in the 50s, you see this huge room with a computer that couldn't hardly do anything, and we thought it was amazing, right?
Yep. And that's kind of where we're at.
And yeah, and I mean, it came so quickly down to, the computers that my dad was programming with back in the 80s, and now we're to this. I just see that exponentially going so fast with.
Totally. Yeah.
With these, like, I just see it going so quickly with these quantum computers. I just see everything going very, very quickly. So.
No, I think you're totally right. We have advancements today and tools today too that we didn't back in the day. So, a lot of people say we're kind of in what the 60s were for computing. But we have regular computers to help us with simulations and calculations and even sort of machine learning to help figure out how to make our qubits more stable. So we're actually using bigger, better tools to build these things. So my hypothesis would be that it's going to be a lot faster. So yeah, again, we're going to start seeing these things really, really come of age really, really quickly.
Right on. So I think we kind of answered this question some already, but what led you to build QuSecure? I think, like I said, we've answered this, but I think it was just you said you have a lot of ethics. You're in the ethics community. You're big in that part of it, and I think that kind of lends itself to QuSecure pretty well. Is that part of what led you to building QuSecure?
Definitely, yeah, definitely part of it. Even the quantum piece of the journey was a bit of a sort of windy path. We actually, the founders and I started out with a venture studio. So that was called Quantum Thought. And the idea behind that was because it's such early days, a couple of my co-founders are also investors, so they come from that space. So what they brought was this idea of a sort of hybrid, like investment studio / incubator, where we'd start and fund quantum projects in quantum computing, and then basically kind of like throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks, put smart people on problems, give them business resources, etc. And ideally, if any of those ideas matured, they could then become startups in their own right and spin out and do their own thing. So we worked on a bunch of different things in the quantum computing space, all the way from financial algorithms, bond swapping optimization, things like that, to chemistry. Quantum computing is really cool has a ton of potential for chemistry and drug discovery and materials discovery and that kind of thing. All the way even to when we started, when the pandemic started, we worked on contact tracing using quantum algorithms. So a ton of different stuff. And what became really clear ultimately was that some of these, we're still in development with quantum computers, and these machines are maturing at a really fast rate. Some of these use cases need some time to develop, but cybersecurity was the now. It's the immediate thing that we need to face and head off before it gets bad, right? So from the ethical standpoint, and also from the market maturity standpoint, it just became very, very clear that QuSecure was the winner and where we needed to put all our time, because this is something that we're almost already behind on, in terms of the solution needs to be implemented as soon as possible, especially if you have sensitive data, right? So that was kind of that subset of the journey, was really discovering the cybersecurity piece of quantum technology is such an important and now use case, and then that makes it really exciting. Yeah,
it does. You said something in there, like when you were with Quantum Thought, you had a lot of smart people and you were kind of throwing spaghetti against the wall and seeing what's stuck.
Yeah.
It kind of leads me to ask, how did you build your team for QuSecure? Because you said there's a lot of smart people, and I'm sure there's a lot of smart people, but in the grand scheme of things, there's probably not that many people that work quantum computing, quantum physics, there's how did you build your team?
Yeah.
With Quantum Secure, how did you find the people and the correct people to do so?
Yeah, great question. That is one of the biggest problems in the industry, is that there's more talent needed. I think so. A friend, Jack Hittery, who runs Quantum and AI at Alphabet X, he at one point had his team count the number of people in quantum computing, and this was just a couple of years ago, and they counted 800 in the U.S. So I think it's
holy cow,
a lot since then, right? Yeah, tiny, right?
Yeah,
and you do have to, to get really into the qubits of it, you have to have some specialized training. So I think I've seen a lot of programs growing at universities. One cool thing that would happen at Quantum Thought was a lot of students would reach out to me. And so I took on a lot of either interns or people who had just graduated from their programs, and really, really smart and really passionate people. And that's one of the coolest things. There's just a lot of really passionate, smart people. So grew the team from some of that. Actually, one of the people, a number of those team members ended up with us full time, and they then went on to work with QuSecure. And of course, our founding team went over there. But one of our some of our key IP was actually developed by one of the interns who came over and now works with us full time post graduation. But yeah, a lot of really young, smart people contributing to this. And then on the other side, we just got really lucky with on the business side, some smart people coming in, and that was one of the key things too in quantum is a lot of it lives on the research academic side. So one of our goals with Quantum Thought and ultimately QuSecure was building the bridge between some of that talent and expertise and the business world and the commercialization world.
Yeah. I was looking, let me get back on there. Looking at your company, and you do have quite a leadership team. Your advisors, I don't know how you were able to land everybody that you landed, but it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. It's a good.
It is a good place to be, but you also get to work with your dad.
I do. Yeah.
How's that? That's got to be pretty cool.
It's awesome. Yeah, we actually, so before, even before Quantum Thought, we'd started a startup together where we worked, it's called Neural Sales, and it was AI and sales. So, he's the business brains, and I was kind of the background sort of beat booper on the code.
The beat booper.
And I don't know. I learned so much from him, and it's such a privilege to get to work with him, and just have opportunities too that I probably would have never had access to had we not started working together. Of course, working with family brings its own challenges always, but
sure, always does.
But he's a genius, and I'm constantly inspired by him, and it's the bar is high for me, so I try to rise to it.
Well, that's awesome. That's a really cool thing.
Yeah.
And we're going to revisit that here in a few minutes, because I want to talk to you about one of my daughters.
Okay.
But we'll come back to that here later. But I want to ask you, like, right now, where do you think that your current industry, just quantum computing, where do you think it falls short? Where do you think that you can do better? Not necessarily you specifically, but just the industry as a whole.
Interesting. I mean, if there's a wish list, I'd love to see more funding and more money going to it. One thing that I would very much like to see is, one thing that I talk a lot about and think a lot about is on the ethical side, we need people developing these technologies that are representative of the people that are using them. And so we need, both cognitive diversity, we need diversity of workforce. So one thing I would hope to see, and do hope to see in the quantum computing space more so than the typical makeup of computer engineers today. Personally kind of being a woman, it was kind of a 1-to-8 ratio in school and going on from there. So, like to see more women, like to see more people of color, like to see kind of all kinds of diversity in the workforce that are contributing to building and growing these technologies, because I think that's going to be huge for taking in different perspectives, empowering all kinds of people through that technology, et cetera. And I see a lot of cool programs kind of that are aligned to that. Something cool about quantum, I think, is that a lot of the development or a lot of the technology is available on the cloud. So while, you're talking about the big, like IBM rooms full of these computers back in the 50s, they weren't accessible to the general population. And now, because of a lot of cloud-based stuff, far more people have access. So, and there's a lot of education programs around it. And so that's encouraging to me. I think that's one thing that we could do better, put more money towards it. And, on the bright side, there's a lot of things that we're doing right. It's very collaborative. Since it's still a small space, there's cross-company collaboration that's very cool. A lot of empowerment within the industry, a lot of excitement. Yeah. I'd love to see it grow and develop into a very diverse workforce.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer, and it needs to, especially with 2 years ago there only being 800 or so people,
right.
In the United States working in this industry. Like it needs to grow all over, but we do need to bring, like you said, the people that are using it in, and why not? Like it, yeah. It's an area that needs some help and needs some light shown on it for sure.
Yeah.
So looking at your website, you do a lot of solutions for like enterprises, businesses. That's where most of your solutions are. Is there any plans for like individuals? Like, could I go to you and say, hey, I want some security for just like a family plan? Is that something that Quantum lends itself to, or is it more for like you go to Apple and Apple gets a quantum security for all their users? Is that, how does that use case lend itself?
That's a great question. So the model as it is kind of a business to business. So, we're agnostic as far as what the data looks like. It could be on your phone. It could be, going between phone and wherever else. It could be on big servers. It could be, wherever it is. So we're pretty agnostic when it comes to what the data looks like. We'll do it all. But we do it mostly. We offer our software to companies who then kind of handle your data. So if you wanted to see this as a consumer, you kind of got to put some pressure on the company. But I'd say, ultimately, again, over the next 10 years, you will start to see as a consumer, and maybe you won't see it, maybe you won't be kind of privy to it. But those data streams are going to be quantum protected, or they'll have to be, right? Because otherwise they're no longer secure.
Yeah. Okay. And then another one of the things that I noticed is like a lot of your solutions are software based, but you do have an embedded solution. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at that, and I'm like, with a lot of the potential for threat out there, I guess, like an embedded solution with how the EV market especially is growing. Like, and I could be totally off here. Like that, I think would be like a huge market for an embedded solution. Am I off base in how I'm thinking there, or how does that embedded solution differ from the software solution?
No, nailed it. You've given away some of our secrets, man. No, that's actually a huge market. So EV, autonomous vehicles, etc. Right? That's what you're pointing to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, that's huge, right? Cars are just kind of these big computers now, and kind of going more and more towards that, and that the data around that is very important, and we obviously want to prevent hacks. on that side of things. So yeah, that's a huge market that we're kind of that we touch on and that we interact with. So very much, and if you think of it kind of in a broader sense too, the embedded stuff, the chip level stuff, a lot of things are now IoT or edge. We talk a lot about edge now. So so many connected devices beyond our phones, our smartphones, and a lot of hacks actually happen. There's famous hacks that have happened like through the temperature sensor in the fish tank in the lobby that was connected to the network, and that's how someone got in and took something down, or so all of those.
What?
Yeah, so right.
Yeah.
So through these devices that you don't think too much about, right, that are still on your corporate network, and they're the little, they can be the temperature sensor or the fire alarm or anything that is now connected. So much of our stuff are these connected devices, or say we're moving into a world where we might have augmented reality glasses or all these kinds of things. So that's a super important side of things that we do too. It's kind of data wherever it lives, however it moves. It's still got to be protected.
Yeah. Here's this is where my brain goes when I start to look at stuff that I don't know anything about. Right. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at this quantum computer, and it's the little chip is kind of several stories down, and it's held just above absolute zero to keep it cold, right? But then you have an embedded chip that you can put anywhere. Like, how do you keep that chip from overheating? When you put it, like, how does that work when this supercomputer, quantum computer chip has to be held at absolute zero? Like, I don't understand how those two can be working side by side. Like, how do you keep those working?
Another great question. So this the quantum computer chips. So there's again, since it's early days in quantum computing, there's different kinds of architectures and different things that people are playing with to build these quantum computers. And one of the biggest ones is, you got to keep the qubits at like almost too cold to move, so that you can keep them in a state where you can play with them. So I like to think of our solution, again, because my brain's pretty simple, I like to think of it in simple ways, simple terms. We do three things. We've got the new math, the cryptography that protects data and encrypts it in a non-quantum crackable way. We've got these protocols that protect the channel when data is moving around. And then third, we have this quantum random number generation. And that is a chip in itself, generally speaking. And what's cool about that is that right now, random numbers are super important for cryptography. But when we generate random numbers, we generate them via a computer program. And it's impossible to generate a random number without having a pattern, because computers themselves aren't random. They're using a process to do it. So one of the ways that hacks can be carried out is that a hacker could reverse engineer a random number, or they call them pseudo random numbers, and then figure out the key to the lock, so to speak. So long story short, getting back around to your question, we generate these quantum random numbers, which are genuinely random numbers. You can't reverse engineer them. And that takes place on this chip. And so the chip... yeah. And so the chip is... these can actually... You don't need to treat these in a delicate way. Well, more or less to the extent of the other chip. They're actually using... you don't need as much control over them as you do the ones that are doing the complex quantum calculations. So yeah, you can put these anywhere. Basically, you can throw them kind of anywhere you would throw any kind of chip that we think of today. So yeah, that's an advantage we have. We're working on even putting them up in space. So, there's different kind of environment considerations you've got to have when you put something up in a satellite, radiation and all these things. But yeah, otherwise it's, we don't have, we're lucky to be in the cybersecurity space where we don't have those same limitations that the really smart people building the quantum computers have.
Gotcha. So that must be where I was reading an article, and it said that you have a solution that has a chip that can offer like 60,000 keys per second.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So that makes it just impossible to hack.
Yeah. It's cool.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's okay.
Yeah.
So let's kind of move on to what I said before. You're an ethicist. You consider yourself an AI ethicist. You are on the journal you're an advisor for the AI ethics journal. Why is this so important to you? Why is that part of it such an important part of this entire journey?
Yeah, and I think, technology has such a hugely profound impact on everything that we do day to day. It's pretty much impossible these days, at least walking around the streets of Silicon Valley, to find someone who doesn't have a smartphone. And it goes so far beyond that. And so this kind of developing technology that there's a lot of people who are in ethics that are working on preventing the robo-apocalypse, the Terminator, Skynet kind of thing, which is which is good, and I'm so glad there are smart people working on that. That's less the what I'm passionate about, and for me, it's more kind of the how do we get these technologies to augment us and kind of increase, make us more happy and content and fulfilled humans, and how do we, empower people that wouldn't otherwise have access to technology and kind of use, since it's so embedded in our day-to-day lives, how do we use it to empower rather than to just get stuck doom scrolling, or some of the well-studied negative impacts on development that these things can have. How do we kind of flip it, since it is so such a given that we're going to interact with it every day? How do we make it enhance us, so to speak?
Okay. No, that's awesome. I'm glad there's people working on the doomsday scenario.
Yeah. There's actually
the way that things are going right now, I'm not sure that we're going to get to the robo-apocalypse before we do it to ourselves. So I'm not as worried about that. But
this it actually, speaking of family, there's actually some of it was born out of my dad and I took a road trip around Alaska one year, and we were just talking kind of the whole time about how we were feeling, just like being on social media, and how it was kind of, it's a little bit of a depressing conversation, right? Like it's not fun to be constantly like looking at the highlight reels of people's lives, and it's kind of designed in a lot of ways to make you feel bad about yourself, and I don't really have to explain it to you, right? And so a lot of the ethics stuff, and I work on it with my dad as well, came out of how can we flip the script? How can we use it to make better humans rather than more insecure humans?
No, that's awesome. Thank you. All right, now I want to get a little more personal and go back in our conversation where I said I want to talk about my daughter, and bring that back to when we were talking about you working with your dad. So I have one of my daughters. I have 5 children, and my middle one is, I have a feeling she's a lot like you were as a kid. Like, she is extremely driven. She's 16 and she wants to be a pediatrician, and everything that she does is full force, 100%. Like,
That's awesome.
if she gets a B, she's pissed, right? Like, she just, and it's not her fault. It's the teacher's fault. And 99% of the time, it is like, I'm like, no, it can't be. And she'll show me and I'm like, oh, okay, that one actually is the teacher's fault. So then we have to go and be like, okay, and the teacher's like, oh, well, that was my fault, but she's, she just strives for the best, and she knows what she wants to do. And she's just a go-getter and goal-oriented. And, I'm a roll with the punches kind of guy, and I've made my living just off my back. This is my first tech job ever, and I've just, I've swung hammers and lifted heavy stuff my whole life. And so I'm asking, I guess, how did your father help you in your journey with you? And is there advice that you could give me, being somebody like that with my daughter?
Oh man, hey, shout out to Bud's daughter. They just took 4th place in state.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
That's awesome. But it sounds like a lot of what you're doing for your daughter, being an advocate, being a cheerleader, kind of listening when she brings stuff up. I had many conversations with my dad about what it was like to be a girl in computer science, and later in a woman in business, and we educated each other. And I think it just, not a lot of people have this, but I really had that kind of cheerleader and advocate and unconditional love and support. And it sounds like a lot of the stuff that you're doing. Work ethic, I think, is something that I would like to pass on to my kids someday. Not your great sort of, rah-rah, just and leave it at that. But, I believe in you. You must have worked hard on this. Hard work is important. I think that's that's such a huge piece of things too. Is just encouraging that hard work, and it's okay to fail too. Being a safety net.
Yep.
Yeah, it's okay to fail. Try and fail, and that's how we learn. And gosh, so much of startups is that failure, and the part that you see, it's the iceberg. The part that you see is the success piece, but you're hitting your head against the wall 99% of the time, and then you find something that works. So I think being comfortable with that failure and making it okay as well. But yeah, she sounds like a badass. Would love to talk to her. She is a badass. They're all badasses in their own right. But she is just, she's just she's just got a different gear than the others, Yeah. Her name's Emmy, by the way. Emmy. Hey, Emmy.
Yeah. I'll show her this one. Yeah. So, yeah, thank you. And, I'll say the same thing to your dad, because he had to have done something right, and he had to have been an advocate for you as well. Like, you can tell you're very comfortable in your skin, and you don't get that without good parenting. So
yeah, it's a fun fact about me. I used to be so shy that people would ask my parents if I was deaf or mute. So I have my own to get more comfortable in my own skin. But yeah, no, I had so much. Well, I got so lucky with my circumstances.
Yeah, well, good deal. Yeah, you have to grow, and you did for sure. So I've listened to you on a couple podcasts and seen you up on stage for a couple different things. So good deal. So what do you like to do now? Like, what are your hobbies and interests? What kind of motivates you to do different things?
What's a hobby?
Probably work.
No, I love music is one of my hobbies. I like to play really bad guitar. That was my quarantine hobby that I picked up. Play bad guitar and sing in the shower. Stuff like that. Read books, or these days listen to audiobooks. Work takes up a good amount of time. Spending quality time with my partner, etc. Trying to steal other people's dogs whenever I can.
Okay, explain that one a little bit.
Mostly dog sitting, so like the legal kind of stealing people's dogs.
Okay, gotcha. Nice. Well, this has been a lot of fun. We're coming up on the end of it, so we'll probably better land the plane. But I'll ask you the same couple questions that I ask everybody that's on this show, and then we'll kind of get out of here. But what advice would you give to founders or soon-to-be founders that are going to watch this program?
Oh man, I think one is just do it. I think I was lucky at Stanford. They have such a culture of just go for it and see what happens. Go for it if you have the opportunity. I remember I came into the business and startup world sort of with this idea that everyone older than me or more senior than me had some magical experience that I didn't, and you kind of find as you're going along that everyone's doing in some ways everything is being done for the first time. No startup looks like any other startup. So bring your creativity, bring your stick-to-itiveness, and at the same time, the other side of that coin is be humble, because some of that experience really does. You can learn a lot, and sometimes you're wrong, and it's okay to be wrong. You gotta. Failure is part of it. Again, it's the iceberg. What you see is a success piece, but a lot of it is hard, and a lot of it sometimes you feel like you're not succeeding, and then all of a sudden something awesome happens, and you get another wind, and so go for it. It's hard. It can be hard. If it's hard, you're probably doing it right. Pivot, be agile, be humble, but be bold at the same time.
Atta girl, I like it. And then, what is the best way for our viewers to get in touch with you if they so wish?
You can reach out, anytime. My email is rebecca@QuSecure.com. Love to chat. You can talk to you about the product, talk to you about nerdy stuff. Hit me up.
Great product. Good B2B, not B2C yet, but B2B. And if you have a business and you want a good solution, definitely hit her up.
Thanks.
Rebecca Krauthamer, thank you for being on the show. It was a great pleasure.
This has been so much fun. Thank you so much, Bud. Thanks for having me.